Dervla Simm and I'm a Senior Associate here in the Public Law and Policy team at Hogan Lovells. I'm here to talk to you today about what we do in our team. Ever since I studied public law at university, it's fair to say I have been genuinely hooked. And in preparing for this talk, I've been reflecting on why that might be. Public law is really any aspect of decision making made by a government or public bodies. The fascinating thing for me is that this therefore embodies the very big and the very small aspects of life that are all so important to us as a society. At the one end, it underpins these huge monolithic constitutional principles, like the need for the government to abide by the rule of law. At the other, it provides a way to shore up day-to-day decisions that can impact any of our lives as individuals, like how much we pay for our electricity or whether we can book a minicab using our smartphone. That's why so many of the cases our team works on find their way into the press, because fundamentally these decisions have a real and significant impact on our society as a whole and on individuals. And we are lucky that we have the machinery in this country to hold public bodies accountable, to make sure they make lawful decisions in a fair way on issues big and small. You might be wondering, okay, but what is public law exactly? Well, public bodies, like all of us, have to comply with the law. Public law is essentially the rules that govern how public bodies in particular have to behave. At a very high level, public law requires decisions to be reasonable and within the scope of the decision maker's power, but also to be made in a fair, unbiased way with appropriate consultation and using a fair procedure. Where a person or company is affected by what seems like an unfair or unlawful decision, there are various ways they can challenge that. And the main route is by bringing a particular type of claim called a judicial review. This is a really important safety net in our legal system, and it's really at the core of what public lawyers do. You can use it to sue the government or public bodies to get a decision overturned or a different decision made, or, in the case of human rights breaches, even damages for the harm that you've suffered. So, why does a corporate law firm have a dedicated public law team? Well, as a firm, we increasingly find that a lot of our clients are operating where the commercial world meets the world of public policy and regulation. And that's not really surprising. There's a lot of public regulation on so many of the industries in which our clients operate, from life sciences on the one hand to banking on the other. The government also needs to really drive economic growth and innovation, which requires a genuine understanding of businesses and a need to ensure that innovation is done safely. We help clients embrace the opportunities that can be found at this intersection between government and business, whilst also protecting them against some of the risks. So, what do commercial public lawyers actually do? Well, there are three key strands to our work. The first, which I've touched on briefly, is policy engagement. This is a really core, but actually unique part of what we do. We facilitate dialogue between government and businesses, working on both sides of the divide. We work with government and regulators, helping them to consult effectively and to make good, fair, robust decisions. We work with commercial clients in engaging with government on the issues that really matter to them. That means getting them a seat at the table with the right people at the right time so that they can help government understand their concerns and, hopefully, end up with a regulatory framework that means they can do business more effectively. Because we're lawyers, we can build in the legal angle to the engagement that we do with government, which tends to make our arguments stronger and more persuasive, but it also lays the groundwork for any further advice or, if needed, litigation. The second strand to our work is legal advice. As public law specialists, we can provide invaluable advice to our clients on both sides of the line. We advise government on the nature and scope of their powers, i.e., what they can legally do. That might seem straightforward, but it's actually often very complex and, as you might imagine, there can be a lot of scope for interpretation. We can also advise government on how it can make sure its decisions are made as fairly as possible. So we could advise on, for example, when it should consult and with whom. So, if a regulator is planning on making a change to a regulatory code, for example, we can make sure they do it in a way that's fair, that gives everyone affected the right opportunities to have their say, and results in a robust code that leaves everyone in a position to know where they stand. We also advise commercial clients, for example, on how to interpret laws and regulations that apply to their businesses. We might also advise on how prospective changes to the law, for example resulting from leaving the EU, might impact them, so that they can either adapt their businesses or, where they're concerned about those changes, potentially engage with government or even consider the merits of bringing a legal challenge. The third strand is litigation. Sometimes, despite all our best efforts to engage with government, the government makes decisions that are a real commercial problem for our clients. And there may be concerns that the government has acted unlawfully or at the very least unfairly. In those situations, we will act for our clients in litigation. For example, we successfully represented Uber in challenging TfL's refusal to grant it an operator's licence. That meant that Uber could continue providing private hire vehicles in London, and that's a service that so many in our capital have come to rely on. We also defend public bodies from judicial review claims. For example, we recently defended the government on the Bulb case. Bulb was an energy supplier that went into administration. The government wanted Octopus Energy to take over its customers and proposed to make a payment to Octopus to help make this happen. But competitors, understandably, were not happy. And they said this amounted to the government giving Octopus an unlawful subsidy. We were part of the team that successfully defended that transfer, giving lots of certainty to consumers across the country. Even in just setting out a bit about what our team does, I'm reminded why I find this such a genuinely interesting area. I love the fact that being a public lawyer necessarily means working in many different industries and sectors, as well as for the government itself. Any client affected by government decision making or regulation may need our help. That means in any given week, you could be working for tech clients, banks, or central government departments. There's endless variety. We also do a real range of work. There's a mix of policy engagement, legal advice, and litigation for the highest profile clients on the highest profile issues. And that's why it's such a great team to be part of.